Hi, I'm Cameron. I'm the founder of a tech company worth $50 million. But that day, my own family kicked me out of the company I built from nothing. I was sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor, looking out at the Seattle skyline, when my phone buzzed. A text from my older brother, Michael. Expect a call from our lawyer. I stared at that message for a full minute. 8 years. 8 years I'd been building this company, and this is how it ends? With a lawyer's threat from my own blood? I typed back, understood. But here's what they didn't understand. What they forgot in all their scheming and plotting. I still owned 51% of this company. And when you're dealing with family who's willing to destroy you, sometimes you have to make moves they never see coming. Let me ask you something. What would you do if your own family betrayed you? If the people you trusted most in the world decided you were expendable? 8 years ago, I was 24 and had an idea. Cloud-based inventory management for small businesses. Revolutionary? Maybe not, but I saw something others didn't. The gap between enterprise software and what mom and pop shops actually needed. I started in my parents' garage in Bellevue. Literally. Dad's old workbench became my desk. Mom brought me sandwiches when I forgot to eat, which was often. Those first 6 months, I lived on ramen noodles and pure determination. The breakthrough came when I landed Peterson's Hardware as our first client. Old Mr. Peterson had been tracking inventory with index cards for 30 years. 30 years! When our system helped him cut costs by 40% in the first quarter, word spread fast. That's when Michael showed interest. "Ooh, little brother," he said, "you might actually have something here." Michael was the golden child. Harvard MBA, worked at Goldman Sachs for 5 years. When he offered to handle business development, I was thrilled. Finally, family support. Sarah came next. My younger sister, fresh out of law school. "Someone needs to handle legal and compliance," she said. "Family discount, right?" She smiled that Sarah's smile that had gotten her out of trouble since she was 5. I gave Michael 30% equity and Sarah 19%. Kept 51 for myself, majority control. Dad always taught me, never give away control of something you build. Smart man, my father. The company exploded. Within 3 years, we went from garage startup to legitimate competitor. Michael's connections opened doors I never could have accessed. Sarah navigated the legal maze of patents and compliance. We were the perfect team. Or so I thought. The first red flag should have been the meetings I wasn't invited to. "Just routine operational stuff," Michael would say. "We don't need to bog you down with details. Focus on the product." The second red flag was Sarah's sudden interest in corporate governance. "We should formalize our board structure," she suggested during our monthly family dinner. "Bring in outside expertise." I trusted them. God help me, I trusted them completely. 3 months ago, things started feeling different. Conversations would stop when I walked into a room. Michael would end phone calls abruptly. Sarah began CCing a lawyer I'd never heard of on routine emails. But the day everything changed was last Tuesday. I was in my office working on our Q4 product roadmap when I noticed something odd in our server logs. Someone had been accessing our financial models and client contracts outside normal business hours. I dug deeper. The access was coming from Sarah's credentials, but the login times were suspicious. 2 a.m. on weekends. Sarah barely stayed past 6 on weekdays, let alone worked weekend nights. Then I found the smoking gun. Buried in our email server logs, I discovered an external forwarding rule on Sarah's account. Every email containing acquisition, merger, or valuation was being automatically forwarded to an address I didn't recognize. j.davidsonsynergycorp.com. Synergy Corp. Our biggest competitor. My hands were shaking as I traced that email address. James Davidson, CEO of Synergy Corp. The same company that had been undercutting our bids for the past 6 months. The same company that somehow always seemed to know our pricing strategy before we announced it. That's when Michael's text arrived. "Expect a call from our lawyer." They weren't just pushing me out. They were selling me out. I sat there in my office looking at the framed photo on my desk. The 3 of us at our first company Christmas party 3 years ago. Michael had his arm around me. Sarah was making bunny ears behind my head. We looked like a real team, a real family. But families don't do this to each other. Families don't spend months plotting behind your back. Families don't sell your life's work to your enemies. I picked up that photo, our symbol of better times, of trust, of shared dreams. The glass was cold against my palm. In a few hours, this picture would represent everything I'd lost. But right now, it represented something else. It represented what I was willing to fight for. The lawyer called exactly 1 hour later, Patricia Hoffman from Hoffman, Bradley and Associates. Her voice was crisp, professional, and completely devoid of warmth. Mr. Cameron, I represent Michael and Sarah's interests in this matter. They've asked me to discuss a potential buyout of your shares. Buyout? I kept my voice steady. This is news to me. They're prepared to offer market value for your 51% stake. Given current revenues and projections, we're talking about $18 million. $18 million. For something worth $50 million in its current state, probably twice that if the merger with Synergy went through. That's generous, I said. When do they need an answer? End of business today. The board is meeting tomorrow morning to discuss the company's future direction. Board meeting? What board meeting? I was the majority shareholder. No major decisions could be made without my approval. I'll need to review the offer with my attorney, I said. Of course, but Mr. Cameron, your family hopes this can be resolved amicably, for everyone's sake. There it was, the veiled threat wrapped in family concern. After she hung up, I sat in my chair for 20 minutes, just thinking. The Seattle traffic hummed 32 floors below. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my office floor. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. They thought they had me cornered. Young, naive Cameron who trusted too easily. The little brother who needed protection from big, bad business decisions. But they forgot something crucial. This company wasn't just my job. It was my identity. Every line of code in our core platform I'd written or supervised. Every major client relationship I'd built personally. Every innovation that set us apart, it came from my vision. And most importantly, they forgot that I still held the majority stake. I opened my laptop and did something I never thought I'd do. I Googled private equity firms Seattle. If my family wanted to play hardball, I'd show them what hardball really looked like. The first firm I called was Cascade Partners. They specialized in tech buyouts, and their website mentioned they moved fast when they saw value. This is Cameron Mitchell from TechFlow Solutions. I'm the majority shareholder, and I have a proposition for you. 3 hours later, I was sitting across from Jennifer Walsh, managing partner at Cascade Partners. She was sharp, no nonsense, and exactly what I needed. Let me understand this correctly, she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. You own 51% of a company valued at $50 million, and your family is trying to force you out? That's correct. And you want to sell to us instead? I want to sell to someone who understands value, someone who won't betray the company's mission or its employees. Jennifer smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who smelled opportunity. We can close this deal in 48 hours, she said, but it won't be cheap. We're talking about a hostile acquisition, essentially. We'd need to pay premium. How premium? $25 million for your 51%. That's roughly 40% above market value. So, 40% above what my family was offering. I almost laughed. There's one condition, I said. The current C-suite gets terminated immediately upon acquisition. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. Personal? Business. They've been compromised, selling proprietary information to competitors. Can you prove that? I slid a folder across her desk. Email logs, server access records, the forwarding rule to Synergy Corp. Everything. Jennifer spent 10 minutes reviewing the evidence. When she looked up, her expression had changed. This is serious corporate espionage, she said. We could pursue criminal charges. I just want them gone. Clean slate, fresh start. Consider it done. We shook hands at 6:47 p.m. on Tuesday evening. By 8 p.m., the paperwork was drafted. By midnight, the deal was structured and ready for signatures. Wednesday morning, I dressed carefully. Navy suit, blue tie, the watch my father gave me when I graduated college. I wanted to look like the CEO I'd earned the right to be. Michael and Sarah were already in the conference room when I arrived. So was Patricia Hoffman and two men I didn't recognize. Probably Synergy's representatives, though they didn't introduce themselves. "Cameron!" Michael stood up, arms spread wide like we were meeting for Sunday dinner. "Ready to move forward with this transition?" "Absolutely," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Though I should mention, there's been a slight change of plans." Sarah frowned. "What kind of change?" I placed a document folder on the table. "I've sold my 51% stake to Cascade Partners. The acquisition closes in 30 minutes. The room went silent. Not just quiet, silent. The kind of silence that follows a car crash or a death announcement. Michael was the first to speak. "You what?" "I sold the company. Well, my majority stake. Cascade Partners now owns controlling interest in TechFlow Solutions." Sarah's face went white. "You can't do that. We had an agreement. We had a conversation with a lawyer I didn't hire about terms I didn't negotiate for a company I built that you were selling to our competitors." Patricia Hoffman cleared her throat. "Mr. Cameron, this action may constitute a breach of fiduciary duty to the other shareholders." I smiled. "Actually, Patricia, as majority shareholder, my fiduciary duty is to maximize value for all shareholders. Cascade paid $25 million for my stake. That's 39% above the market valuation you offered yesterday." "$25 million!" Michael's voice cracked. "Cameron, we're family." "Family doesn't spy for competitors, Michael. Family doesn't plot behind each other's backs." That's when I pulled out my trump card, the email logs, the forwarding rules, the evidence of their betrayal. Family definitely doesn't sell proprietary information to Synergy Corp for 6 months while planning a hostile takeover. The two unidentified men suddenly looked very uncomfortable. One of them, tall, gray hair, expensive suit, stood up abruptly. "We should go," he said. "Sit down, James," I said, not breaking eye contact with Michael. "Oh, I'm sorry. I should introduce everyone. This is James Davidson, CEO of Synergy Corp, the man who's been receiving our confidential business information for months." Davidson's face flushed red. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Server logs don't lie, James. Neither do email headers or IP addresses." I turned back to my siblings. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice when our biggest competitor started anticipating our every move?" Sarah finally found her voice. "Cameron, you're making a mistake. You're destroying everything we built." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting it. From you." My phone started buzzing. A call from Michael, then Sarah, then an unknown number, then another. "Excuse me," I said, glancing at my phone. "Cascade's lawyers are calling. Something about termination letters for the existing C-suite." Michael jumped up. "You can't fire us. We have contracts." "Actually, corporate espionage voids pretty much any contract. Jennifer Walsh sends her regards, by the way. She was very interested in your relationship with Synergy Corp." The phones kept buzzing. Michael's phone, Sarah's phone, Patricia Hoffman's phone. James Davidson looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "The beautiful thing about private equity," I continued, "is they move fast. No bureaucracy, no family drama, just pure business efficiency." Sarah was crying now. "Cameron, please, we can work this out. We're family." "Were," I said, standing up. "We were family. Before you decided I was expendable." I walked toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing. Cascade is implementing new security protocols immediately. Your access to all systems has been revoked. Security will escort you out." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. That photo on my desk, the one from our first Christmas party, I'd left it there. A reminder of what we could have been, of what they chose to throw away. But sometimes you have to choose yourself over family. Sometimes survival means walking away from people who would rather destroy you than see you succeed. The last thing I heard as I left the conference room was the sound of phones ringing. Lots of phones. And voices getting louder, more desperate, more panicked. My phone showed 67 missed calls by the time I reached my office. By the time I finished cleaning out my desk, it was 69. But I wasn't answering. There was nothing left to say. The security guard handed me a cardboard box, standard corporate humiliation protocol. Pack up 8 years of your life in a box that used to hold printer paper. But I wasn't the one being humiliated today. My hands were steady as I packed the last of my personal items. The family photo stayed on the desk. Let someone else deal with that particular piece of history. But there was something else I needed to secure first. Rachel Martinez had been our CFO for 3 years. More importantly, she'd been my closest friend since our Stanford days. If anyone would have the inside track on Michael and Sarah's conspiracy, it would be Rachel. I found her in her office, staring at her computer screen with the expression of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. "Rough morning?" I asked, closing her door behind me. She looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen in Rachel's eyes before. Fear. "Cameron, I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you, but they said—" She stopped, shook her head. "They said if I told you anything, they'd make sure I never worked in tech again." "Tell me what exactly?" Rachel pulled up an email thread on her screen. "This started 6 months ago. Michael called me into a private meeting, said he and Sarah were concerned about your erratic decision-making and wanted to explore strategic alternatives." 6 months. They'd been planning this for half a year. What kind of strategic alternatives? At first, just general stuff. Market valuations, industry consolidation trends. But then Michael started asking for specific financial models, client revenue breakdowns, cost structures. All the data you'd need for a merger analysis. Exactly. Rachel's fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through the emails. "Cameron, I saved everything. Every request, every document they asked for, every meeting they had without you." She was right to be scared. What she was showing me wasn't just family betrayal. It was potential criminal conspiracy. "Show me the worst of it." Rachel opened a folder marked M&S Requests. Michael and Sarah, I assumed. Inside were dozens of documents, financial projections, client contracts, proprietary algorithms, staff performance reviews, everything you'd need to hand over a company. "This one came last month," Rachel said, opening an email from Sarah. She wanted a complete breakdown of which employees were essential versus redundant post-merger. Post-merger. They weren't just planning to push me out, they were planning to gut the company. "Rachel, did you give them what they asked for?" She nodded miserably. "Michael said it was for contingency planning. Sarah said you were on board but wanted to keep it quiet to avoid panic among the staff. I believed them because, well, they're your family." "What about the synergy connection? When did that start?" Rachel pulled up another email thread. This one made my blood run cold. James Davidson's name appeared in CC fields going back 4 months. Meeting invites, financial summaries, even recordings of our quarterly board calls. Jesus, Rachel. They were giving Davidson everything. It gets worse. She opened a calendar invite from 3 weeks ago. They had a face-to-face meeting with Davidson and his acquisition team at the Fairmont Olympic. I was supposed to present our Q3 numbers directly to Synergy's CFO. "You went to this meeting?" "I had to. Michael said you'd authorized it. But Cameron, something felt wrong the whole time. Davidson kept asking about your commitment level and whether you'd be amenable to transition." The pieces were falling into place. They hadn't just been planning to merge with Synergy, they'd been planning to eliminate me entirely from the equation. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing useful, I hope. I said you were completely committed to the company's growth and that any major strategic decisions would need your full approval as majority shareholder." Rachel had inadvertently saved my ass. By defending my position, she'd probably forced them to accelerate their timeline and make the sloppy moves that exposed their plot. "Rachel, I need you to do something for me. Can you send me copies of everything? Every email, every document, every meeting record?" "Cameron, I could lose my job. I could get sued." "You're going to lose your job anyway. Cascade is cleaning house, but if you help me document this properly, I can make sure you land somewhere good." She stared at me for a long moment. "They really betrayed you, didn't they?" "Completely." "And you really sold your stake to hurt them?" "I sold my stake to protect what we built. There's a difference." Rachel's expression hardened. Send me your personal email. I'll forward everything in the next hour. Why? Because loyalty should mean something, because you built something amazing and they tried to steal it, and because, she paused, because I've seen what happens to companies when Synergy acquires them. They gut the innovation, fire half the staff, and turn everything into commodity software. What happens to companies when Cascade acquires them? They usually grow. Cascade invests in talent and technology. They're not raiders, they're builders. That afternoon, sitting in my apartment in Capitol Hill, I spent 4 hours reviewing everything Rachel had sent me. The evidence was overwhelming. Michael and Sarah hadn't just planned to push me out. They'd planned to destroy everything I'd built and sell the pieces to our biggest competitor. But the most damning evidence was a recorded phone call from 2 weeks ago. Sarah had accidentally sent Rachel a voice memo instead of a text message. In it, she was talking to someone, presumably Michael, about the timeline for removing Cameron from the equation. "We need to move fast," Sarah's voice said. "Davidson is getting impatient, and if Cameron figures out what we're doing, he could block the whole deal. We need him gone before he realizes what's happening." Michael's voice was harder to hear, but I caught the key phrase: legal basis for removal. They weren't just planning a business coup. They were planning to have me legally declared unfit to run my own company. My phone rang. Jennifer Walsh from Cascade. "Cameron, we need to meet. Tonight." "What's wrong?" "Your siblings are challenging the sale. They filed an emergency injunction claiming you acted without proper board authorization." "That's impossible. I'm the majority shareholder." "Not according to the documents they just filed. They're claiming your 51% was held in a family trust and that any major decisions require unanimous family consent." I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. "That's not true." "Can you prove it?" "Absolutely. I have the original incorporation documents, the stock certificates, everything." "Bring them. My office, 8 p.m. "And Cameron? Bring that evidence your CFO sent you. If they're lying about the trust, they've probably lied about other things too." I spent the next 3 hours gathering documents. The original incorporation papers I'd filed 8 years ago. The stock certificates issued when we brought in our first angel investors. The board resolutions authorizing Michael and Sarah's equity grants. Everything proved the same thing. I owned 51% outright. No trust, no family control, no restrictions on my ability to sell. But what worried me was how confident they seemed. People don't file emergency injunctions based on complete fabrications unless they think they can win. Jennifer's office was in a glass tower downtown, the kind of place where serious money made serious decisions. She was waiting with 2 lawyers and a stack of documents when I arrived. "Show me what they filed," I said. The first document made my hands shake. It was a trust agreement dated 8 years ago establishing the Mitchell Family Technology Trust. According to this document, my 51% stake was held in trust for the benefit of all 3 siblings, with major decisions requiring unanimous consent. The second document was worse. It was a board resolution, supposedly passed 3 years ago, authorizing the trust structure and appointing Michael as trustee. Both documents bore my signature, signatures I'd never made. "Jennifer, these are forgeries." "Can you prove that?" I pulled out my copies of the real documents. The incorporation papers, the original stock grants, the actual board resolutions from our company records. "These are the real documents, filed with the state, notarized, recorded. There was never any trust." Jennifer's lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa Chen, examined both sets of documents under a magnifying glass. "The signatures are good," she said after several minutes. "Whoever forged these knew what they were doing." "But they made one mistake," I said, pointing to the trust document. "Look at the date." The trust was supposedly established on March 15th, 8 years ago, but according to my real incorporation documents, TechFlow Solutions wasn't legally incorporated until March 22nd. You can't put stock in trust a week before the company exists. "That's a smoking gun," Jennifer said. "But we need more. Document forgery is a serious criminal charge. We need to be absolutely certain." That's when I remembered Rachel's evidence cache. I pulled up the email thread where Sarah had requested copies of all founding documents for legal review. The request was dated 6 weeks ago. They needed the originals to make convincing forgeries, I said. Rachel, our CFO, sent them scanned copies of every founding document 6 weeks ago. Lisa Chin smiled grimly. That gives us motive, means, and opportunity. But we still need to prove the forgeries conclusively. What do you need? Handwriting analysis, digital forensics on the document files. And we need to move fast. Their injunction hearing is tomorrow morning. Jennifer made 3 phone calls. Within an hour, we had a forensic accountant and a handwriting expert en route to the office. The analysis took until 2 a.m., but the results were definitive. The trust documents were sophisticated forgeries, but they had tells. The paper stock was wrong for 8-year-old documents. The digital signatures showed metadata inconsistencies. And most damning, the handwriting analysis revealed subtle differences in pen pressure and character formation that indicated forgery. We've got them, Jennifer said. But Cameron, this is bigger than just blocking their injunction. Your siblings committed multiple felonies, document fraud, corporate espionage, potentially RICO violations if we can prove conspiracy with Synergy. What do you recommend? We let them hang themselves in court tomorrow. Present the evidence, expose the forgeries, and watch them scramble. The hearing was in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom at 9 a.m. Michael and Sarah arrived with a small army of lawyers. They looked confident, almost smug. They had no idea what was coming. Their attorney, Richard Blackwood from a White Shoe Seattle firm, presented their case with polished arrogance. The trust documents, he claimed, clearly established family control over TechFlow Solutions. Cameron's unilateral sale violated both the trust terms and his fiduciary duty to his siblings. Your Honor, Blackwood said, this is a clear case of a family member acting against the family's collective interests. Judge Morrison examined the trust documents. Mr. Mitchell, how do you respond to these allegations? Lisa Chin stood up. Your Honor, we respond by demonstrating that the documents presented by plaintiffs are sophisticated forgeries. The courtroom went dead silent. That's a serious accusation, Counselor. It's a serious crime, Your Honor. We have comprehensive forensic evidence proving these documents were created within the last 6 weeks, not 8 years ago. What followed was the most satisfying hour of my life. Lisa methodically destroyed every piece of Michael and Sarah's case. The dating inconsistencies, the handwriting analysis, the digital forensics showing document creation timestamps. But the coup de grace was Rachel. She walked into that courtroom at 10:30 a.m. like an avenging angel. Dressed in a sharp navy suit, carrying a briefcase full of evidence, she took the witness stand with the calm confidence of someone telling the absolute truth. Ms. Martinez, Lisa Chin said, did the defendants request copies of TechFlow's founding documents? Yes, 6 weeks ago. Sarah said they needed them for a legal review. Did you provide those documents? I sent high-resolution scans of every founding document, including stock certificates and board resolutions. Was there any mention of a family trust in the original documents? No. Cameron owned 51% outright. No trust, no restrictions. Did the defendants discuss plans to remove Cameron from the company? Rachel looked directly at Michael and Sarah. Yes. I have a recorded conversation where Sarah explicitly discusses removing Cameron from the equation before he could block their merger with Synergy Corp. The recorder clicked on. Sarah's voice filled the courtroom. We need to move fast. Davidson is getting impatient, and if Cameron figures out what we're doing, he could block the whole deal. We need him gone before he realizes what's happening. Michael looked like he wanted to disappear. Sarah was crying. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Mr. Blackwood, do your clients wish to withdraw their petition? Blackwood was frantically whispering with Michael and Sarah. After 2 minutes, he stood up slowly. Your Honor, in light of new information, my clients withdraw their petition. I thought they might. Bailiff, please take the plaintiffs into custody pending an investigation of document fraud charges. I watched as my siblings were handcuffed in open court. Michael kept looking at me like he couldn't believe this was happening. Sarah just cried. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office at TechFlow 2.0, the company Rachel and I had started with my Cascade money. $25 million goes a long way when you know exactly what you're building. Michael got 18 months for fraud and corporate espionage. Sarah got 12 months plus probation. They both had to forfeit their TechFlow equity to pay legal fees and restitution. The original TechFlow thrived under Cascade's management. They kept every employee, expanded the product line, and grew revenue by 40% in the first quarter. Everything Michael and Sarah claimed to want for the company, except they weren't there to see it. I kept one thing from my old office. Not the family photo, that went in the trash where it belonged, but the original stock certificate from TechFlow's incorporation, the first one ever issued, showing my 51% ownership. It hangs framed in my new office now, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the people closest to you will try to take everything you've built. That family loyalty has limits. That trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Rachel knocked on my office door. Ready for the board meeting? Absolutely. We walked down the hall to our conference room where our new team was waiting. Young, hungry, brilliant engineers and designers who believed in building something revolutionary rather than just profitable. No family members on this board, no siblings with hidden agendas, no lawyers with forged documents. Just people who earned their seats through talent and loyalty. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Cameron, it's Michael. I get out next month. Can we talk? I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges, once burned, should stay burned. We had work to do. Have you ever been silenced by family or had someone try to steal what you built? Share your story in the comments. I'll read everyone and I'll believe you.